So in reflecting on the topic of what the Prophet ﷺ would do if he was living during the time that we're living today, just kind of thinking through and reflecting for myself, like if honestly the Prophet ﷺ was here and he was witnessing what we're witnessing, what you're witnessing, what you're growing up with, what you're seeing on your phones, on the news every single day, what you scroll through, what would he do? Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. It's a very scary thought to think about in terms of how far away or how distant would we be in what we're doing and what we're feeling versus if he sallallahu alayhi wasallam was with us. And so as I was reflecting, and to protect myself from any hubris of trying to conclude what he sallallahu alayhi wasallam would do if he was here, I rather want to go through what he did do when he was alive, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam, because that gives us the best example of who he is. And when I was reflecting on just thinking about where we're at in our journey of life and where we are as an ummah and what we witness on a daily basis happening with our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, in Kashmir, in China with the Uyghurs, in India, in Syria, in Yemen, Iraq. We've seen all of these years, day after day, a new part of the ummah aches, a new part in Sudan, a new part of the ummah feels pain. So if we just take ourselves back to Mecca, because right now from an authority standpoint and an external standpoint, we're in the same situation as the Muslims were in Mecca, where even though we're large in numbers, even though we're large where we have countries that are majority Muslim countries, all of you and I see that there's so much weakness in them in being able to stand up and actually do something, because the system itself has been built around something very different. And so you can see the system of Mecca and compare it to the system that we exist within today. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do when the believers, when they proclaimed their Islam and they started to be persecuted in the streets, especially those that did not live or come from a bloodline or a tribe that was protected, that was honorable in the eyes of Quraysh? What happened to them? And so there are many stories that come to mind, and all of these are famous stories that I'm sure all of you have grown up with, but let's put ourselves in the position of the Prophet ﷺ at that time. Not the people being tortured, not the people being persecuted, but what was the Prophet ﷺ as an observer of this? What was he feeling in those moments? So the most salient point that comes to, the most salient experience that comes to my mind when I think about this is the experience of the Prophet ﷺ walking every single day and passing by the family of Yasir, radiyallahu ta'ala an, his wife Sumayya and his son Ammar being tortured before his eyes. And every day the Prophet ﷺ would walk past them and he would see them with his own eyes, and yet he could not intercede. He could not intervene. He couldn't stop it physically. He couldn't even say anything, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because they were unprotected. He had no power behind him. There was no physical might. There was no army. There was no strength for the believers to break down the system that had been created at that time, where Abu Jahl could stand there and kill Sumayya in front of their eyes. There was no ramification. There was no consequence. And every day the Prophet ﷺ himself would walk past and he would lay eyes on them. And all he would say, ﷺ, with the depths of his heart and the pain that overwhelmed him physically and emotionally and spiritually, was صَبْرًا آلَ يَاسِرْ فَإِنَّ مَوْعِدَكُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. All that he could tell them, persevere. Persevere. Be patient. O family of Yasir, because truly your end is Jannah. what's waiting for you on the other side of this pain, this physical and emotional torment, is spiritual bliss, everlasting joy. But imagine now, forget the family of Yasir for a moment, and just think about what he was feeling, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where you and I are in the same position. We are looking at our phones every single day. We're seeing things that our brains, our bodies cannot comprehend. We can't understand this level of evil. And he was witnessing the same thing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he couldn't do anything. So that weakness that you and I feel, that pain that you and I feel, was the same pain he felt, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was the same pain that he felt when he was witnessing Bilal ibn Rabah dragged into the sand on burning and scorching days of heat, and have boulders put upon his body, crushing him to try to get him to say, I don't believe in Allah, to swear by their gods. And yet he continued to swear, Ahad. Ahadun ahad. You can't strip that from me. You can take everything from me. You can take our homes. You can take our hospitals. You can take our schools. You can take all the physical manifestations of dignity you think that you have control over. You can take the humanitarian aid. You can do that. But what you will not take from us is what's in our heart, which is ahadun ahad. The Prophet ﷺ witnessed that, and he could not intervene. He was witnessing that with the people he loved, the people that believed in his message before anybody else did. Imagine the pain he was feeling in that moment, and yet still his resolve was to make dua for them, even as a witness. That's all he could do. The same thing with what was happening with Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, or Mus'ab ibn Umair. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, his mother tortured him emotionally. She told him, because he loved her so much, he had a deep relationship. It was known to the people of Mecca. He had a deep relationship with his mother. And so when she found out that he converted to Islam, she told him, I'm not going to eat or drink anything until you revert back to the gods of our forefathers. And she was starving herself. We're witnessing other people being starved. She was starving herself so that he would turn back from what he proclaimed to be his faith and believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no one else. And it was torturing him internally every day, seeing, and he would kept going back to her. Please eat, please drink. Don't do this to yourself. I won't turn back. Until finally he got to a point to tell his mother, and this, imagine the pain of saying this to the person that you love the most in this world, that if you had 100 lives, and one by one each of those lives would be taken, I will not turn back from proclaiming that La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Imagine what that felt like in that moment. And only then did she say, okay, there's nothing that's going to change his mind. Mus'ab ibn Umair was one of the wealthiest. His mother was very wealthy, and she used to clothe him in the most expensive Yemeni clothing. And so he was known to be one of the wealthiest youth of Mecca at the time. And when he went and secretly converted to Islam, his mother found out and she cut him off. She stopped giving him money for clothes. She stopped giving him money for food. She locked him in the house and didn't let him get anything until he would turn back on his faith. And yet nothing happened. To the point that he was the carrier of the flags in both Badr and Uhud, where he was martyred in Uhud, and that he passed away, they said, without even enough clothing to cover his entire body, because it was a sign of Allah accepting him to say that the clothing you gave up in this world, imagine the clothing you're going to get in Jannah. So you don't even need enough in this world to cover you at your own death, because you will have everything you're looking for. when you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I want to end with this part, because this is the one that I think brings us closest to what we're feeling and what the Prophet ﷺ felt, was when the Muslims were boycotted. And not just the Muslims, the Banu Hashim and the Banu Muttalib. They, because they are the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ and they would not give up protecting him, so all of the clans of Quraysh came together and said, we're going to boycott these two clans because they're not giving up protecting the Prophet ﷺ and this message. This was in the year 7 after the revelation. So they pushed them out a little bit further out from the Kaaba, and they all sat in this valley by themselves. Nobody could marry from them. Nobody could give them food. Nobody can trade with them. Nobody can do business with them. Nobody can give them any type of provision. They had to fend for themselves for 3 years, to the point where they got to starvation and they had to eat the leaves from trees and the bark because there was no food. It's mentioned that the cries of the babies in this small valley were reaching the doors and the rooms of the people of Quraysh in Mecca because of their starvation and their pain. The Prophet ﷺ witnessed his family members and the believers with him going through that in the exact same time as he himself was witnessing it within his own family. He experienced what we're seeing today. He was there for it. He was present in it. He felt it and he went through it. And yet the only thing he could do was persevere. Just survive. Keep faith in Allah. Mata nasrullah. When is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's victory going to come? When is His help going? Inna nasrullahi qareeb. It's close. It's coming, but you have to persevere. And after this starvation that they went through, after this boycott, after this sealing every way, and the food is right there. It's right in front of them. What we're witnessing today, it's one arm's length away. And yet it's being artificially held back. That happened to the Prophet ﷺ. To the point that Khadija and radiallahu ta'ala anha and Abu Talib, in that 10th year, after the 3 years of boycott, the 3 years of starvation, the 3 years of being exiled, both of them passed away in the 10th year. It was the worst year of the Prophet ﷺ's life. It's called Am al-Huzn. It's the year of sorrow. It's the deep depression, the feeling of complete loss. And the Prophet ﷺ went through that. So what you and I feel on a daily basis, I just want to tell you that he felt the same thing, if not more. And because of that, I end with this, and this is what I want you to use as part of your discussions. The role that we have in these moments in history, because these are unprecedented moments. There is a deep connection between the pain and sorrow that the Prophet ﷺ witnessed and felt himself and Masjid al-Aqsa. Why? Because in that same 10th year, after all of this pain and deep sorrow that the Prophet ﷺ felt from the loss of his uncle, his external protection, and his wife Khadija, this internal protection he had, you know what Allah did? You know what his gift was? You know what helped him get out of that sorrow? سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى مسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله لنريه من آياتنا. His gift was Al-Isra and Mi'raj. That's what happened after this year of difficulty, this year of sorrow. It brought him back straight to Masjid al-Aqsa, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made barakah, made blessed. He led the Anbiya in salah, so it showed him he had a suhbah, he had people that came before him. He had brothers in faith that he could connect to, that experienced different types of pains and test themselves. But the greatest thing that he was given in that trip was what? Salah was finally legislated 5 times a day. this gift to get us out of our sorrow, to get us out of our pain, to give us agency, to give us something that we know we can do on a daily basis that no human being can strip from us. It's praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I would conclude by saying what the Prophet ﷺ would do if he witnessed what we're witnessing today, if he felt what we were feeling today, he would not let one salah pass by without turning to Allah. He would not let one meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cross him by without prostrating his head to him, crying to him, asking him for help. Asking him to get us out of this. Asking him to use us to change what we feel is unchangeable, what we feel is inevitable. And so that's what I want to leave you with, in saying our agency in this world where we think people are in control of things that seem so far beyond ourselves. Remember, the world changed in 23 years after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Quran to this man, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he taught him how to apply it through 5 times a day, meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he did the impossible. And you and I, billions of people, years, centuries later, are still putting our heads on the ground, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help because of that. And so we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us follow the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we're guided by it, that we use that as our light to help us understand the life we're living through today. Every single day is a moment for us to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, Ya Allah, use me. Ya Allah, use me to change what seems unchangeable. And so we ask that inshallah in these groups that you have to truly talk about what you can do, what you're able to do. Knowing that the Prophet ﷺ was put in these same and worse circumstances, and yet we're still here today because of those moments. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts us and forgives us. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.